Yeah, just to me, I think like it would have been nice to have seen absolute redemption without the expense of someone losing their life. Especially like I felt that they were possibly building towards Ben and Ray breaking the cycle of what had happened before with one of the things people have complained about regarding the Force Awakens is how they feel very derivative of A New Hope, and I kind of saw it as history repeating itself. And I thought going into this that Ray and Kylo together were going to break that cycle that's been repeating in the galaxy and finally do something different. And while I think this is a very different film to Return of the Jedi, it leaves things off in a very similar way, to where it's like at the end of this trilogy, what has changed really versus how the galaxy was at the end of Return of the Jedi, you know?
In the words of George Lucas, it rhymes. It's like poetry.
Yeah.
All of these trilogies have, this connection. Um, Here's the thing. I think JJ did a really great job in bringing the whole saga together. Obviously, I mean, you're not going to please everybody. You can't wrap up every character, every plot, in the best way possible, I guess. I know there's a lot of people that would have liked to have seen, and myself included, more screen time for Rose in this movie. Um, that said, I think she played a pretty decent part of like being a part of the battle, helping Finn on the carrier, or sorry, on the Star Destroyer at the end. I don't think they totally wrote her out, but they significantly cut her role down. It would have been great to see more from her because I love Kelly Marie Tran. I think she's wonderful as Rose. Um, Things like that. But on the whole, just thematically speaking, there's a lot of echoes and kind of like what we were talking about with on the wreck of the Death Star. That baptism of Ben Solo in water versus Anakin with fire, and also with Han, the parallels with Han and Ben there, kind of going back to like Empire with the I know line. Also, I really enjoyed John Williams' score on this movie. One thing that when I walked away from the first viewing, I felt kind of on the score, but having listened to it quite a bit and seen the movie a few times, I heard a lot of recognizable themes from previous films. Um, I heard some stuff from Revenge of the Sith. That scene with Rey during that training montage where she has the staff and the lightsaber. There's one beat from Revenge of the Sith that's kind of played there. Um, Obviously, we get a lot of Palpatine. We get Palpatine's theme, and I know there's a few other I'm definitely leaving out, but I really enjoyed that there were other themes in there.
The Imperial March recurs several times.
Oh yeah,
Yoda's theme is played when Luke Skywalker lifts the X-wing.
which was awesome.
The Force theme occurs a lot, of course. Then there's Rey's theme, the First Order / Kylo's theme, and then trying to think. And there's obviously several more. I just can't think of what they are off the top of my head. My favorite piece, though, is when Rey hears the voices of the Jedi. That rendition of her theme is
Fantastic,
incredible.
and
I love that scene, and I think it's more satisfying than if they had appeared as Force ghosts to her, because really, Rey has no connection to any of those people except for Luke. And so I feel like it would have been kind of weird for like her to just see all these random people. She's like, oh, who are they? But like hearing their voice, and I like this idea of trying to connect with the Jedi of the past. And there's also this kind of ambiguity whether some of them are even truly Force ghosts or not. Like, say, Mace Windu, is he a Force ghost or is he just one with the Force like some of the other Jedi? So I feel like this is a very good middle ground that was satisfying in a different way.
yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite bits of the entire film. I mean, we hear from We hear from Ahsoka. I think we hear from Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Yoda. We hear from Luke in there. I think Kanan.
Yeah, there's Kanan, Mace Windu, Luminara, Unduli, Ayla Secura, Adi Gala, and then all the ones you just mentioned. I think, did you say Mace Windu or did I say
Yeah,
Mace Windu?
yeah.
Okay.
Mace was in there. Yep.
But I do think it's kind of interesting that this kind of implies that Ahsoka is canonically dead at this point. So I think that's kind of interesting. I
Yeah,
mean,
because I don't think, and I haven't even finished the Clone Wars and Rebels and all that, so you would know. But I mean, the way it ends up, there was never, I guess, like a definitive end to her story.
yeah, she doesn't have a definitive end as of now, but this suggests she
Suggests
does
that she
now.
might be. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see what comes of that. I also like to talk about Poe's arc. I liked that. I don't feel like Finn had an arc, but
Yeah, which was so funny because like John Boyega was kind of like, yeah, had
yeah,
more fun doing this one, but your character didn't really do anything. But okay.
he was kind of dogging TLJ, and I wasn't. I mean, I didn't mind too much because it's like, okay, that's just your opinion, dude. But like,
Yeah,
I found it hilarious just because it's like, well, you had an arc there that was actually pretty great, and
yep.
now here, you're so proud of this, and you have no growth.
I think
Your
he was
character.
just pumped to, I don't know, like do his hair different and have a different costume. Like I remember at
I
Celebration, he was like, "Yeah, I got to bring some of my own flavor to this." And I mean, visually, yes, but the character is pretty flat throughout the duration of the film.
Yeah, I think he's commented on this a lot that he missed being with Daisy and Oscar. Oh, well, he was with Oscar and TLJ, but he missed being with Daisy on set. So I think he liked being together with everyone.
For sure. And I can't deny that like the emotional impact of the ending when we see Finn and Poe and they see Ray, they kind of lock eyes for a second, they have that embrace. I mean, regardless of how you feel about the film, I think that really packs a punch because that really is our trio of the whole trilogy. Akin
Yeah, and I
to
really I really liked how he fleshed out their dynamic. I mean, Finn already had chemistry with Poe and Ray respectively, but Ray and Poe had never really interacted beyond meeting at the end of The Last Jedi. They
for
just
sure.
said, "Hey, I'm Poe," and she's like, "Hi." And he's like, "Oh, I know who you are." Basically,
Hmm.
that was the extent of their interactions, and I liked that they had kind of a contentious relationship, like they were kind of rivals in a sense, like the way that they argue over the Falcon and BB-8, and then he when she pulls out the lightsaber and he pulls out the flashlight, and it's just like he pales in comparison to her. Um, but I really like the dynamic of the trio and how they related with everyone else in the gang. And on that note, like C-3PO, I loved his role in the movie and that he got more to do this time around. Um,
Yeah. Anthony Daniels had some really funny lines in this movie. One of my favorites was when they were in like that quicksand type stuff, whatever it's called, and they fell through. And then he's posed like yelling for everybody, like, "Where's Finn? Where's Ray?" And then here comes C-3PO. He's like, "You didn't say my name, but I'm okay," or something like that. That was hilarious. And that was totally just like Anthony Daniels just having a blast. I mean, you could tell
yeah,
at Celebration he was very hyped for his role in this movie. Um,
on a like deeper, more emotional note, I kind of picked up on when he gives his like last speech before he says, "I'm taking one last look at my friends," which is like a hard hitting emotional beat in the trailer that still packs a punch. Before he says that, he reiterates a line spoken by Poe earlier in the movie where he says, "If this mission fails, it will have all been for nothing. All this time, blah 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 blah." I don't remember the exact verbatim of what he said, but it's along those lines, a bit about saying that this mission has to succeed in order for them to he has to surrender his memories in order for them to succeed at this, basically. And I really liked that he's like the C3PO as a droid is a very objective um, perspective of the saga. He offers a very objective perspective, and I like that he, in that moment, when he could have said the odds of our success are blah 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 to one, kind of alluding to what he does in all the other movies, but I kind of like that he just in that moment he the way he reiterates how desperate their situation is
He commits to the cause in that scene. Absolutely.
yeah, but like beyond that, like by instead of just reducing it to numbers, he tells them something they've already heard, um and I really love Poe's arc in this movie and how it kind of continues off of what where he went in The Last Jedi, where where he was kind of unfit for leadership, and he's kind of dealing with that in regards to the resistance being basically destroyed um, as a result of some of his brash actions. And here he is inheriting the mantle of leadership, and he doesn't feel he's ready. He's mature enough to recognize that he doesn't feel like he can do this, and he doesn't feel like he can measure up to Leia, and I feel like that's a reoccurring thing throughout it as well. And I really liked that.
Yeah, I loved that. I loved that. That's kind of like, again, going off of what Ryan had teed up in The Last Jedi. And in that same scene, I mean, we see Poe at with Leia, with her body with the cover on her, and he's just talking to her like, listen, I don't think I'm ready, all of this stuff. And then we see Lando come in, and he has that line of like, I forgot what he said. It was yeah, Poe says something to the extent of like, I don't know how we're gonna win, and Lando walks in and he says, basically, we with each other, we have each other, and this is what's gonna win the fight. Which again, totally goes back to The Last Jedi with the final scene between Rey and Leia, and Rey's like, how are we gonna rebuild? How are we gonna get through this? And Leia says, we have everything we need. Kind of continues that message of, as long as we have each other, we're going to get through this. Again, complimenting The Last Jedi in a really great way. I guess our negatives, I guess we never really got, I mean, I didn't get into a lot of my negatives. Did you want to talk about that?
The first time I saw it, I thought the pacing was very rushed in the beginning, but it flows a lot better on repeat viewing, so that's kind of diminished for me. It is a lot. It is very overwhelming, a lot of information thrown at you at once. It's kind of messy in its structure. So I do feel it's the weakest of the trilogy, but I think what really works about it really works.
I definitely agree. I think the character development, I think the action, the adventure element of it works really well. But I mean, having seen it a few times, I still feel pretty similarly with how I did the first time, in that structurally it's kind of a mess. Namely, the first like 45 minutes. I mean, I saw something on Twitter that was like, they said they felt like J.J. Abrams and the editor were on cocaine when they were editing this movie. And literally, it feels like that. It kind of reminded me of Rogue One, the beginning of, we're hopping from planet to planet in super fast succession. I don't know. Did you want to touch on like Zori or?
Oh yeah, I liked how okay, Jana. I feel like she was kind of a worthless addition. She was kind of pointless. I mean, she's cool in regards to, she brings the horses, and she's kind of cool in regards to how she plays into the action. But like, I don't really feel like she contributed much at all to the story or Finn's development as a character. I didn't really get much from her, and which is kind of disappointing for me.
I mean, I did love the scene with Jana and Finn, where she basically says, "Hey, we're a bunch of defective stormtroopers as well." Kind of giving a little bit more to Finn's dynamic in this, of like, that's where Finn came from, but that's only mentioned in one scene, and it's never really built off of from that. So I definitely agree.
Yeah, but I really liked how Zori Bliss factored into Pose because in this time of doubt where he's unsure of himself as a leader, he's also seems his faith and hope is shaken in the resistance's fight in this war. And she represents this opportunity to leave that behind and go back to an old life. And she kind of offers that to him, but and he kind of seems to consider it briefly, but he's and I like that she recognizes that even though he's in doubt, and he expresses that, and he says the world, the everyone's scared. And one thing about that I really liked is that when we go to Gajimi, we see the First Order occupation of the city. And in The Last Jedi, we heard a lot about how the First Order was taking over all these systems and blah, 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 blah. But we never really saw it in action. And I really liked that element of their trip to Kajimi, in addition to this is the first time we've seen a planet destroyed or we've actually spent time there, you know? And beyond that, she also is the bridge to Babu Frick, and Babu Frick is one of the greatest characters of all time. And
his accent it caught me off guard, honestly, whatever kind of accent he has. But I saw something else on Twitter that was really funny, where he pops up in Zori's ship at the end, where he's like, "Hey, hey!" Like they were like, "That's an entire mood" or something like that. They said something of like, "Yeah, we feel like Babu," when he says "Hey, hey" in the cockpit in that one scene. That was great.
I love Babu Frick, but yeah, I like how she factors into Poe's arc, and how she's also kind of a scoundrel with a heart of gold, kind of like a Han Solo archetype in a way. But
And I'm
yeah,
glad we got more development with Poe, with that line of like, we find out that he was a spice runner, and immediately that kind of drew a bit of a Han Solo parallel with me, kind of giving him slightly more backstory with him and Zori. I definitely like their dynamic, and even though they had pretty limited screen time, I really enjoyed their dynamic, and Kerry Russell was great.
yeah, I really bought their chemistry, even though she has that helmet on. I mean, she lifts the visor a few times, but you still bought into the fact that these people had a past. And I guess Oscar Isaac really sold that, but Kerry Russell did a great job of selling it with very limited ability to do in much of any expression because her face is covered until like those few scenes where she lifts her visor and you see her eyes at least. But yeah, they both did a great job working off one another. And and I love that moment at the end where he kind of like nods his head like, "Hey, this is over. You want to kiss or something?" And she's just kind of like, "Yeah, no."
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that something would go into fruition there, but that was definitely a funny moment. Also, in regards to new characters, Dio is another new character, and I just found out yesterday that he's voiced by JJ, which I didn't know.
Yeah, and Chris Terrio plays someone in the movie. I can't remember off the top
Yeah,
of my head.
I don't remember.
I saw his name in the credits. But yeah, I like Dio a lot too. Dio is a great addition as a droid. He had some pretty funny moments. I liked how he kind of followed around BB-8. And then this is like a really small moment, but I like when Rey kind of like oils his wheel because he's like, "I got the squeaky wheel," and it's just this like really small moment, but it shows so much of who Rey is. And
100%. I was just about to say the same thing. Daisy Ridley is just so infectious. I love her portrayal of Rey. She's throughout the entire saga one of my favorite characters. Same goes for Ben Solo, but for different reasons. But Daisy's portrayal of Rey has just always been so optimistic, enthusiastic, and just caring and loving. And again, that little moment with Dio. I mean, she did the same thing with BB-8 with in The Force Awakens when she first meets him. and she kind of like scares off the scavengers or whatever they're trying to take him. And even when like his antenna gets bent and she fixes that, I mean, again, just another small little detail, just kind of showing who Rey is.
Those little pure moments, they're just really nice, and they just they bring a smile to your face. And yeah, so speaking of BB-8, I kind of mentioned this to you, but I find it very strange that JJ seems to treat BB-8 as though it's Rey's droid in regards to BB-8's. I mean, in The Force Awakens, it makes sense that BB-8 is with Rey most of the time because BB-8 is purposely separated from Poe. But when BB-8 is reunited with Poe, he stays with Poe. And at the end of The Force Awakens, originally, BB-8 was supposed to go with Rey to Octo, but Rian Johnson asked JJ to switch BB-8 and R2D2 so Luke and R2D2 could have a moment. And I just think it's weird that it's like now that JJ's kind of it's his story again. The way he ends the movie is with BB-8 and Rey, and beyond that, BB-8 spends a vast majority of his time on screen with Rey. He has a few moments with Poe, like when Poe comes back with the Falcon, and there's that little interaction of their kind of reunion, and Poe's kind of like, "What did you do to him?" And that's kind of funny. And then there's a few more, like when they're on the planet with the Death Star, like the moon of Endor. It's not the same forest moon, but it's a different moon. There's BB-8 rolls in and tells them that Rey's gone on the skiff or whatever. But beyond those two moments and maybe a few more, BB-8 and Poe hardly interact, and I just find that very strange because Poe is his owner. I don't know. It's just weird to me.
Yeah, you brought that up to me, and I honestly didn't think about it very hard. And it is weird because, especially like in The Last Jedi on the Battle of Crate, where BB-8 comes out from the ship and he's like, "Oh, that's my droid," and he goes over to BB-8 and he like just kind of like gives him a big hug, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you." Every time I see that moment, I just have a huge smile. I love BB-8. He's honestly one of my favorite droids in all of Star Wars. I eat BB-8 up every time I see him. But that it is strange how JJ does treat BB-8 as if he's Rey's. But I mean, at the same time, you could defend it because Rey and BB-8 have such a great dynamic. Obviously, she saved him from those scavengers in The Force Awakens, and again, he is purposely separated from Poe. So I get that they do have a great relationship, but it is kind of weird at the same time.
Yeah, it's a really nitpicky thing. Like it's not something I dislike. It's just something that's weird to me.
On the topic of BB-8, though, I did have a huge laugh in the film where like the tree topples over BB-8 and Rey slowly realizes, and BB-8's just kind of squealing a little bit. She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Like, that was hilarious. I love that.
So I guess you want to jump to, I just thought of something. Chewbacca. Okay. I think one of the hardest hitting moments was when Chewbacca finds out Leia has passed. And
100%.
Jonas gave such a heart-wrenching performance in that moment.
That was the first viewing, at least. That was the one moment where I actually almost cried. I thought the exact same thing. Jonas was giving it his all, just because it isn't just like a quick reaction. I mean, the camera sets on him for about 10 seconds or something like that. You really just see him like crumble like to the floor, arms flailing, just screaming in pain because of that connection with Leia. I mean, he's been with her for all of these years, and the last of the original trilogy, so the original trio from the original trilogy has passed. And yeah, Jonas was just fantastic in that moment. He killed it.
I liked how R2D2 factored into everything. I felt he had more screen time, he didn't necessarily have a huge moment like he did in, say, The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens, where with The Force Awakens, he comes with the map. And then in The Last Jedi, he has that interaction with Luke. he doesn't necessarily have a big moment like that in this, but he has those fun interactions with C3PO that have been kind of missing from the trilogy. I mean, he's interacted with C3PO for sure, but it's been very limited. And I think this did a lot more there with that. And then he's on screen more, and he's definitely more present. And then I liked him being in Poe's X-Wing. Uh, yeah, so I can't really think of a big moment for him though, which is kind of weird.
At the same time, BB-8 probably shouldn't have been in Poe's cockpit, but
I
again,
think I think the reason that BB-8 is with them when they're rolling the horses is just because it's way more practical for.
oh yeah, I was thinking that on this recent viewing too, because BB-8 does help Finn like kind of pull out like a little trap door at one point, and
Yeah, and in
imagining
terms of
R2.
mobility, it makes more sense for them to bring BB-8 with them and have R2D2 in the X-wing.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of realized that in this latest viewing as well. Do you want to talk more about Palpatine, or do you think we covered that enough?
I don't know if I really said much of anything, but yeah, I kind of liked that his resurgence return was left a little vague. I didn't really need it explained in excruciating detail because I don't really care that much. I mean, I just am like, okay, he's back. I can accept that because he says he has a line referencing his line from Revenge of the Sith. Okay, it's some Sith thing. I don't need to know exactly what he did. I just need to know it's some Sith power that somehow he came back. And then Dominic references Dominic Monaghan, in case no one knows what I'm talking about. He has a line saying when they find out about Palpatine's return, he says, dark science, cloning, secrets only the Sith knew. So that kind of adds fuel to the fire. Like, okay, I guess those three things could work in tandem for how he's back. The specifics of his return are definitely left vague. I and in some regards, it would be nice to have that fleshed out a little bit more, especially. But I'm not particularly obsessed with finding that out or not. It's kind of irrelevant to me, but it was nice to see Palpatine back. And Ian McDermott cackle. I kind of thought it was cool that he was kind of like zombified.
Oh, he
And then
looked scary as hell, honestly. He was very
yeah,
intimidating.
and then I liked when he kind of absorbs their life force of the dyad. He's kind of goes to full. He basically is rejuvenated to full Revenge of the Sith, campy Palpatine, and I ate that up.
Yeah, that was a cool detail as well. And another thing with the Force dyad, was that something that was um in canon previously, or was that introduced in this movie?
So I'm not entirely sure, but he mentioned. So I've seen people on Twitter mention that he said specifically that this is the type this bond has this dyad hasn't been seen for generations. So some people I've never played Knights of the Old Republic, but some people think that could be referring to Bastilla and Revan, and I think that and maybe this makes that canon. I don't know. Maybe that was maybe that's where kind of JJ and Ryan kind of got inspiration for this connection. I'm not sure. I haven't played the game, so I don't know a lot about it. So it could have been something made canon that was in the EU.
Not the
really
first time that's happened in this trilogy.
Yeah. So I thought it was I like her taking the name Skywalker because I don't think it makes total sense why she wouldn't want to be proud of the name Palpatine, and Skywalker's influenced her journey so much and helped her become who she is. So it makes sense that she would maybe want to take that name and champion it into the universe, and like make still even all the Skywalkers are dead, but the name lives on. And I like her kind of burying the sabers. I don't know. Some people have seemed divided on that as well.
I
I
love
thought it
that
was
detail. Yeah,
I thought it was kind of cool that it's like you have the twin sabers, you have the twin Force ghosts of Luke and Leia, and then you have the twin sons of Tatooine, and then you got binary sunset, you got twin, 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 twin. You know, it was
it's
just
poetry, man. Yeah, it works. It really does. I mean, as soon as she grabs those sabers and ties them together and puts them 6 feet deep, I was like, ah, this is the funeral that they never had. I mean, Leia did have a funeral in the film, but with Luke as well, and it was poetically done. And you know,
and
I
it kind of feels like them tying a bow on the saga in a way, like because
for
that
sure,
that saber has been not in every movie because it's not in Return of the Jedi or Phantom Menace, but it's been in a majority of the saga. It's an object that's transcended generations, and it's kind of nice. Like it just kind of is a nice kind of tying the bow on this story kind of moment, kind of closing the chapter. Um,
for sure.
I like
And
it in that regard. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the last shot of the film with the binary sunset. We see Ray and BB-8 with the Force theme. Um, you know, for the longest time, JJ was like hinting at like this mind melting like last shot or last scene of the film, and I couldn't even begin to imagine what it could have been. But I was surprised by how intimate it was, but how emotional it was. It wasn't anything gargantuan. I mean, I was kind of theorizing maybe we would see a bunch of Force ghosts unite or something like that, but it was something, and we did see Force ghosts, but just Luke and Leia. It was something more intimate, more personal, and it works supremely well for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had kind of this had been one of my guesses. Not that she would wrap. I didn't predict anything about the saber, but I thought maybe it would end on at the Lara's homestead with the binary sunset, just because the poetry of the saga. That's how Revenge of the Sith ended, basically. So I feel like he would want to honor that. Chewie got his medal. I mean that apparently happened in the comic, but who reads the comic? Not very many people read the comics, so it doesn't really. I feel like like yeah, he got that medal in the comic, but this is more special because I think that was Han's medal. I mean, it's never made explicitly clear who that belonged to beyond Leia was holding it. I suspect it was Han's. Um, Oh, and speaking of Han, like I know we definitely talked about his scene and how we love how it fits in and everything. I was very surprised to see him appear in that capacity. I was expecting if he was going to appear at all. I know there was a rumor that they had filmed a scene for The Force Awakens with Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill, where they take Ben, they drop off Ben to be trained with Luke, and that was something that was supposedly filmed for The Force Awakens. That I
That's right.
thought going into this, I thought maybe this will be the way they give people that scene of these three together that everyone's been clamoring for. And so I thought if Harrison Ford was going to appear in the movie at all, I thought it was going to be like that. But instead, it happened in that other way that we've talked about, the scene with Ben. And I'm very happy with that as well. I didn't see it coming at all. At first, when I heard "Hey kid," I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's Luke," because then it's like a payoff on the "Hey,
That's
see you
true.
around." And
Yep.
so that's what I thought at first, and then it pans over and it's Harrison. It's like, oh, okay, that
I
makes
I did not expect that because it's Harrison is, let's say, selective about what he does nowadays. So I was surprised that they got him back for such a small amount of screen time, but it was
yeah,
better.
definitely. That's why it took me off guard because I was expecting the way they were going to incorporate him was something they already shot for another movie, and I thought that would be a great way to bring him back without having to bring him back, But I think it's awesome that he came back for that scene. I'm very surprised that he did, but I'm glad he did.
Yeah. So I guess just kind of concluding thoughts here. I think it's safe to say we really enjoyed the film, and I know there's mixed reviews and mixed reactions. I know some people that honestly aren't even going to see the movie just because of some of the reviews, and I just think for the concluding chapter of this saga, I mean, you really do need to see it for yourself and kind of come to your own conclusions. And if you hate it, if you love it, if you're in the middle, I think all these reactions are valid, but Star Wars it's just, you're able to get so many different reactions. And again, you're not going to be able to please everybody. Not that that's ever possible or that you should ever try to do that. But I guess we just lucked out. We really enjoyed the film. And don't get me wrong, I have some issues with it from a pace and structural plot kind of front. But in the end, it's definitely a satisfying finale. In the end, if I were to rate it, I go by a scale of 1 to 5. So I would give it a 3.75 out of 5 or a 7.5 out of 10. Last Jedi is actually my favorite Star Wars film. I rated that a 4.75 out of 5, 9.5 out of 10. So in the trilogy, yeah, it is my least favorite. If we were to rank the whole Skywalker saga, well, even beyond that, because I have a list on Letterboxd. It includes Solo and Rogue One and even the Clone Wars animated film. I think I have it placed like number 7 out of all of them, kind of in the middle. But again, I had a blast watching it every single time. I do have some critiques, but it's definitely satisfying, and I'll definitely be coming back to it quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know in terms of rating. So on my blog, I do a letter grade. So I gave it an A minus, but I guess to translate that to your 5. So on Letterboxd, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I get in relation to the saga. I on my ranking, I have it, I think, 6th. I have The Last Jedi first, then Empire, then The Force Awakens, then Return of the Jedi, then A New Hope, then Rise of Skywalker, then Revenge of the Sith, Solo, Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace, Rogue One last.
Yeah, you made me just pull up my list here. So chronologically, my list from best to worst is The Last Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, the original Star Wars, The Force Awakens, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Rise of Skywalker at number 7, Solo, Rogue One, The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and then The Clone Wars at number 12. So roughly in the middle for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So again, David, thanks for coming on, doing this Christmas Eve. Right, it's actually Christmas Eve, but this will be dropping on Christmas Eve edition of the podcast. At the end of the day, I'm a satisfied Star Wars fan. I'm going to be seeing it at least probably 1 or 2 more times before it leaves theaters, especially given the fact that this is the last film we're going to be getting for another 3 years. I really want to cherish it while it's here because at the core, Star Wars is literally my favorite thing ever in terms of entertainment. And I love it so much. I loved these characters so much that we had this 3-film arc with Rey, Poe, Finn, and Ben. Everybody, it's an emotionally satisfying conclusion. And at the end of the day, it's got its problems, but I'm a happy Star Wars fan, and that's all that matters. So again, David, thank you so much for coming on. This has been Austin from the Review Roundtable, signing off.